Voice, um, voice is generated by you forcing air up through almost completely closed or completely closed vocal cords, which have a very flexible, almost fluid edge to them that then vibrates and creates voice. Just like if you blow into an instrument with a reed that vibrates, it creates sound. And then your throat, your mouth, tongue, palate, they're what forms what we consider speech. By taking that sound and putting an envelope around it that we perceive as different consonants and vowels. So because that vibratory mechanism in the voice box depends on the fluidity of the edges of those vocal cords, small disruptions and areas of swelling or nodularity or irregularities can cause significant deficits, let alone if there's paralysis or weakness at one of the vocal cords themselves. So what's concerning? Any change in somebody's voice that lasts longer than 4 weeks should be investigated. Steven Tyler and probably rock singers in general are sort of a special case. What they have as their singing voice is not typically a classically trained singing voice, but it's their voice. And that's what people are used to hearing. And that's their trademark, if you will. Their brand is their voice. And so they may be doing some maladaptive or not great or safe technique things with their voice. However, that's what works for them. It may have worked for them for years until it doesn't. And my guess, and I don't know because I haven't investigated this, I do know, having seen some of Steven Tyler's older video stroboscopies, which is a way of looking at the larynx and the vocal cords in stop action. I've actually seen some of those. The guy, professor in Boston who sees him, was allowed to show them. I know he had vocal cord nodules, which is his baseline. That's normal for him. That's his singing voice, is with those nodules. So you wouldn't want to, for instance, go and do surgery to remove Steven Tyler's nodules because you would mess everything up. Even though you might have a nice, smooth edge of the vocal cord, his voice would be completely changed, potentially forever. So that's not what you want to do. You want to keep him at his native state and make it as comfortable as possible for him. What probably happened is he may have had some increase in inflammation in his voice box for any reason. He was getting sick. He had some allergies. He had some reflux. At any rate, the extreme strain of singing live in a concert and being on tour, there's probably a couple of dilated vessels there that ruptured spontaneously under that strain and high degree of vibration and tension. And those will heal typically. They can go on to form polyps that need to be dealt with, but a vocal cord hemorrhage requires rest and recovery. And that's most likely what happened. That's sort of an extreme situation, although that can happen to, Joe the plumber, who's cheering in his kid's softball game, and shouts really loudly, and all of a sudden there's a huge explosion of energy, of force, causing a rupture of one of the blood vessels. Typically, that'll be under the surface of the membrane, so you won't actually see blood, but I'll see blood underneath the surface. Like if somebody got a hemorrhage in their eye, same idea. Hemorrhage underneath the surface turns red all in that area, and then eventually it turns yellow. And that area can actually turn into a polyp, which becomes problematic and needs to be addressed. So we encourage people to avoid vocal trauma if possible. That's one of the myriad of issues that can occur with the voice. Typically, what happens is people have some baseline allergy and or acid reflux affecting their throat, and they don't notice much trouble with their voice day to day. Then they get sick, or they have a period of very much increase in vocal demand, like they have a sales, event or whatever. They have to talk all the time, conference, they give a lecture, whatever it is. And then their voice goes south and they can't get it quite back. And then some of these things will be age-related problems that start happening to people in their 40s and 50s. Your larynx, your vocal cords, like everything else, your vocal cords start to atrophy or lose their bulk over time, just like we lose muscle mass everywhere. The same thing happens to the vocal cords. They don't come together quite as nicely as they used to, require a little extra force, which under normal circumstances, you're able to adapt to until it reaches a critical level. That doesn't usually happen until you're older, when people get what we refer to as an aged voice. You know what I mean, the old person voice. You know what that sounds like. But in people in their 40s and 50s, there are subtle changes occurring already, which gives you less leeway for when you're under a high stress situation or when you've been ill, right? And you're hoarse while you're ill, and then you do maladaptive bad things while you're ill to try and keep talking or singing, in case of singers, and they push themselves through it, and then they cause an injury, or they just can't quite get back to where they were. And in particular, professional voice users, people who have to talk all the time, that includes lawyers, pastors, teachers are notorious, and singers and actors. They'll notice subtle things about their voice that you and I won't notice. We won't pick up on it. It won't bother us that much. But in them, any little change in what was their previous performance level is significant. And so